Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Your Honor finale, a great finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode. Holy shit. Okay, so let's quickly break this down. Well, first and foremost, we had that opening with Adam. I didn't know, obviously, you had Michael looking for Adam, but couldn't find him. I was like, okay, what's going on here? And it turns out Elizabeth told him the truth about his mom. And I'm like, oh. And I love, him being, Michael losing his shit because, the truth, this and that. It's like, oh, that his mom was fucking a stranger. Because basically for him, it's like, what does the truth actually do? What good does it do? Because it's like he can't yell at his mom. His mom doesn't have a second chance to redeem herself because it's like this one small thing can forever ruin his image of his mom, and she can never make amends. She can never get a second chance in his life, and it's like that was all taken away because you just said, but hey, the truth is out there. That's fucking great, isn't it? I was like, I thought that was this powerful moment of just especially considering, and I think that's the irony behind it because all the lies that are mixed up in this current situation for him to kind of go on at her about the truth and stuff like that. Because I guess in the circumstances he's in of lie after lie after lie, of course, the truth is a thing of don't bring the damn truth into this because the truth is unraveling everything around, it's so fascinating is what I'm trying to say. Just the, I guess, irony behind the statement, but not even the irony behind him not wanting the truth to come out. There's just so many levels to that irony in that regard. But nevertheless, at the same time in this episode, and it's what I brought up last episode, literally every damn storyline is converging because everyone's coming into the truth in their own way, in their own path, in their own lane. First and foremost, Lee, figuring things out because she comes to Desire because it's you guys let Kofi take the fall for it. You guys actually know who was driving the car. It's because it's Big Mo's we could just kill you. And she's like, you could, but there's a letter I left behind. And even then you don't want to take that chance because, this whole thing is going to draw unnecessary attention to you because you are an accountant and that's what comes first and foremost for you. So, just tell me who was driving the car. And it's obviously, it wasn't Kofi. Kofi literally stole the car the next day, but then she was but then it's and you're okay. And I think that immediately set her mind off to think because everyone's immediate assumption is that it was Michael. So then you had, because Nancy last episode was definitely getting a little suspicious of things, and then she's investigating. I didn't expect that war vet storyline to come back like that because obviously Michael set up, he orchestrated everything. He was hey, he was an asshole to him, but even the guy was the dude made me laugh, so that was worth more than any money he could have given me. But it's especially on that day, and it's that day in particular, and we find out why, because he has an association with the date of 10/10. You're damn it, you were so close, Michael, but who is it? It's Nancy. Literally the two women in your life, Nancy and Lee, are both people, when they get that, they got that feeling. Lee's dedicated to her job just like Nancy is. Even Nancy throws that back in Michael's face. Not even Michael, it's later on Charlie's face that I am willing to do, I've been willing to do whatever for this family. It's other people had given up on the Robin thing. I kept going. But obviously learning from him, it's wait, you were saying that they showed up here 10/10, but then it's they lied. They made it seem like it was 10/9. They made sure I knew it was 10/9. Then Nancy calls up Lee, leaves a message okay, you're not going to, it's dude, I'm everything's happening. Everything is happening at once. It's crazy. You even have Jimmy talking to Carlo and telling him hey, just be a man, because I won't always be around, and eventually you're gonna have to be me, and I need you to show me that you've got brains and not ball. There's a time to have brains and there's a time to have balls, which is interesting. He's don't let your emotions get the best of you. Considering the whole how you handled the whole Rocco situation, I think that's a little ironic. Blowing up Famalia and her kids, leaving Eugene an orphan with literally no family, that's why I'm almost you and Gina both let your emotions get the best of you. Same thing for because we finally got some confirmation on what that Kofi did come there to be hey man, I didn't kill your brother, but Rocco not Rocco, but Carlo didn't want to listen. Like, he was just so angry because, this dude, once again, his mom whispering in his ear, I'm sure aggravated that even more, but, so, oh God, there's just so many damn moving pieces in court, like Carlo going on the stand and stuff like that, because him putting on that emotional story, like, oh, he did this and that. Part of me was wondering if some of the story he told in that was that actually some of the stuff he actually did to Kofi is what I'm wondering. Like, he's like, oh, the finger in the iron thing. Like, we saw that Carlo was a little messed up. A little bit. He had, like, a head wound, like a gash on, like, above his, like, one of his eyebrows or something like that. That's the extent of it, obviously. And we saw and heard extensively what he did to Kofi. So I'm wondering in that storyline of what he's saying, like, oh, he was squeezing, like, is that just 100% BS? Or, like the nature of things, you have to keep your lies close to the truth. So, like, what he's describing that happened to him from Kofi, is that what actually he did to Kofi is what I'm wondering. So, like, the whole, like, oh, I'm defending myself, like, storyline of, like, I'm trying to fight back. Maybe, I don't know. But he's spewing this story, trying to come off sympathetic. I had to fight. I was scared. It's like, it don't matter. In pounds, the 30 pounds difference between us. It's like, it's a jungle in there. I'm like, yo, you were selling the hell out of this story. And he's just like, trying to be all sympathetic. But Lee being her, was like, I'm done with this BS. She went and checked on the sale. The sale door locks the moment you close it. And so it's like, all right. So now, later on, Fiona shows up and she's like, all right, I got your ass. She's like, you're sure it locked behind you? It's like when Kofi, it's like, yeah. And then Kofi left afterwards. Like, he closed the door and that's what made you go, oh, I'm fearing for my life. And then afterwards, Kofi left, right? And it's like, yeah. And then she brings up footage and look, does anyone at any point in time see that door close? Because Kofi didn't close the door, and he does walk out. That's why I was actually surprised. I didn't realize he actually walked out. I figured someone came by and dragged his body out. I didn't. That makes that situation, and seeing him like stumble out and then fall, it's like, that's even sadder. But it also shows like, oh, Carlo, you are a filthy, filthy, filthy liar. And it's like, oh, in that moment, it's because at first you saw Jimmy almost being like, all right, proud, he's proud, he's proud. And then, because I forgot what started all this, and this moment in the episode is so damn good. He calls Fiona the C word, and I love that, like, literally everyone in the courtroom, Michael turns and is almost like, you idiot. He doesn't say it, but he got that look. They cut to someone in the jury. It's a big black dude who goes like, puts his hands on like, they're like, that thing you do kind of above the bridge of your nose, where you just kind of go, He had that expression. Even he was like, homie, you fucked up. You got someone in the jury being like, homie, you fucked up hard. And she's like, excuse me, what'd you say? And he was, Michael tried to be like, no. And I love that when it was all said and done, Fiona was like, so who's the C word now? And it's like, which one of us is the C word now? And you're like, dude. Like, Carlo, your dad literally told you to not let her get to you, but you couldn't help. I mean, because it also showed you he has anger issues. He can't control them damn stuff because he doesn't like feeling like weak or challenged. It's like, no. You don't get to talk to me like that. I mean, granted, we know how he talked to, I mean, we've seen this before because it happened exactly when like Nancy arrested him. Like, he kind of, not the same reaction, but a very similar reaction. So it just shows you, because obviously, Fiona was trying to get into the whole thing of like, oh, you want to act like you changed, but in what ways have you changed? And obviously, as you can see in the grand scheme of things, he hasn't changed at all. Something I had skipped over I wanted to talk about was that moment between Michael and Adam. It's always like this complicated feeling you see when like they have their father-son moments. You're kind of like, oh, that's sweet, but at the same time you realize everything that's going around them, and so it makes their father-son moments a little more fucked up, because it's like, you literally caused all this devastation, all this, and you're having this moment. Like, it's sweet, but at the same time, like, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, because it's like, oh yeah, telling him about the story about like, oh yeah, your mom, like the day we got married, like the day I asked her to marry me. Well, we got married. I also found out she was pregnant, and I was so excited. I hugged her, and I basically broke one of her ribs because I hugged her so tight. She was so in pain that she didn't want to like ruin the moment. So he's like, that in itself, was it a lie? No, he was like, that was love, And obviously him and Adam joking, because Adam like goes, he's like, oh, you okay? He's like, he's like, oh, you bastard, you jerk, like, okay. Like I said, it's sweet, but also at the same time, because of the context of everything, you're like, oh, it's sweet, but like I said, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, considering all the circumstances. then you have Nancy confronting Michael about everything, and him going on the defense, and even Nancy saying to him like, "Oh, you see that, like raising the voice and stuff like that, like kind of being like, oh, the way you're acting right now is like someone who's guilty trying to like divert," and it's like, you know that better than anyone. And he just kind of walks away because he's with Charlie, and he sits down and talks to Charlie about everything that's going down. It's like, Nancy thinks I did it, Jimmy thinks I did it, because I didn't realize this until last episode, that Charlie was unaware that it was Adam. I thought, in my head, I guess if you go back, he never expressly says that it was necessarily Adam. I guess, much like everyone, he just jumps to the conclusion like it was Michael doing some self-preservation, which, I mean, in his own right, it technically was self-preservation in many different regards, but it's like everyone jumps to the conclusion that Michael did it, but now it's like, now I know that Adam did it, and he's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I have to protect my son. He's my son regardless of anything. And once Charlie gets it, it's like, if you had told me you were going through all this, like, I would have been there for you. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, I need Carlo to not go down for this, but he's surely going down for this. And it's like, so they're coming after you. He's like, yes, but they think it's me. And he's like, at the end of the day, I'm willing to give away my life if it means my son is okay. Then afterwards, he gets confronted by Lee, which Lee's confronting him, being like, she wants Eugene to testify. And then you just kind of have Michael being like, that can't happen. And Lee confronts him because she's like, it couldn't have been Kofi. It's like, oh, you're going to believe him? Kofi was, it's like, oh, because Kofi was a gangbanger, which is fucked up. You got an innocent kid killed. Yes, regardless of his circumstances, he was still an innocent kid. And for you to kind of turn it around like this, to be fair, not to be fair, you are trying to defend yourself. You're trying to like hide Adam's involvement and stuff like that. So for you to be like, he's a gangbanger, Eugene's a gangbanger, But I thought what's interesting when Eugene goes, hey, you're the great ghost. And it's like, what? It's like, yeah, you're the one that showed up. Oh, and that was before Famale's trial. So it couldn't have been you that killed Rocco. She's like, good, but we can figure out who had he was like, Lee. She's like, figure out who drove the car. Well, if it wasn't you and if it wasn't Desire, then who? And then it's like, without him even saying it, she realized it. And for her, she goes off on Michael because it's like, all the damage you've caused, Famale, her entire kids, Kofi. Now, Eugene's literally alone now because of you. I get it. This is your son and everything. But for him, it's like, I value my son's life way more than my own. And he's like, is that wrong? He's even saying like, hey, Lee, you can take me down to the station. We could say it was me, but let's not fall. Because for him, it's like justice and principles, they fall short when it comes to the life of your own child. And, and once again, that's the parallels between Jimmy. Jimmy's willing to go this far because getting revenge for Rocco. And then Michael's willing to go this far to defend Adam. So like, obviously you see like the two opposite sides of this, like, two sides of the same coin type of situation. But obviously for Lee, it's just like, no, you've perverted everything, because she believed in Michael. She not only looked up to him, obviously there was something building between them, but it's like, no, they can never be an us because of just all that you've done. Like I said, like all this death and destruction, all the lies you've told has created this entire situation. You've caused all of this by you doing what you've done. No matter what your reasoning for it, it doesn't justify all that you've caused. So it's like, what you're going to do is you're going to go in there and you're going to let Eugene testify. Carlo is going to go down. You want to at least give some justice to Kofi. Kofi, to get some justice out of this, you have to let this happen. But in the courtroom, Adam's there with Fia, which in that very moment, he's finding out, wait, the girl my boy is dating is Jimmy's son, but Jimmy's also in the courtroom looking back at Adam. So it's almost like you don't do what I say, I might have to hurt. Well, I don't know whether that's I might have to hurt your son type of thing. And it's just like, it's like, okay, so what are you going to do, Michael? He's literally the angel and the devil on his shoulder. Angel being Lee, the devil being Jimmy. He's looking back and forth. Even I'm like, okay, what are you going to do, Michael? And he says, prosecution's case is closed. He can't testify. You're like, damn. I mean, because he knows that if it's not just his life, it's also making sure that Jimmy doesn't decide to go like, well, because we've seen when making big moves, he because of Kofi, he made a point to kill Famale and all her children. So it's like, so there's no guarantee he won't stop with Michael, that he might make it look like an accident and kill Adam, or just make it look like someone else did it. But regardless, that's kind of been set in stone. And obviously Lee is just kind of discuss it and leaves. And Eugene's like, I thought you said, he's just like, he's not the man I thought he was. So that completely, she just walks away. Because I think that probably just makes her go like, what can you believe in? So because she believed in Michael like so much of like what he represented and everything, to realize who he is, kind of the monster that he is, just because of everything that he's done. That's the complicated thing. He is a monster in his own right. And once again, the parallels between him and Walter White, and it's like feel a little more sympathetic. I feel like more sympathetic to him as Michael than you would him as Walter White. And that's how I picture it, but it's like, you're still kind of, once again, it also comes down to whether you're one of those people that's like, I'm rooting for Walt even at the end. Even when he starts doing the really, really terrible shit, I still root for him. Even though he's power hungry and stuff, you still root for him because it's like, this is a character we're following. So I think it's a lot more, I think Michael's a lot more sympathetic than Walter White, but that's just me. Some people might think, no, they're literally on the same level of just how disgusting of human beings are. To everyone's their own opinion about the whole situation. I think, because what it comes down to is not just the lawful side of things, it's the moral side of things. And obviously, Michael's not leaning in a very gray area. He's definitely leaning in the black of it, just because of like all that he's done with it, but you can understand, like I said, there's a side of you that is, you can understand. You don't have to agree with what he's done, but you can understand why he's done what he's done. So Lee's just like, here's the baseball money, just do whatever you can. Like, I think this legitimately, because she even said it during the conversation with Michael, she's like, you're fucking me up. Because I think her entire worldview is just kind of like, what's anything matter anymore? I think this is severely going to screw Lee over and her outlook on things. I don't think she'll ever be kind of like because for her, it's like the system stacked against you. Nothing, like there is no such thing as real justice, considering the farce of a situation this entire trial, this entire case has been. So I didn't even talk about it, but Charlie had to sit down with Nancy, and it's like, I'm going to be mayor, and hey, you could need help cleaning up, because obviously we know about Cusack, we know about Ruby, like, you're going to need help cleaning the department, like, and she's like, what do you want for it? Because at first he explains to her, it wasn't Michael, it was Adam, and in that moment, Nancy's almost like, oh. Like, because it changes everything, because I think she gets it, like, okay, like, once again, it's a thing no one agrees with, but everyone can understand. I'm like, it was your child. It's like you should have had on every. Even Charlie being like, it was a Baxter. Like, so it's like, you think Jimmy would have gone an eye for an eye. My son for your son. It's like, what could Michael have done? But it's like, oh, she's like, you're threatening me. He's like, no, I'm offering you an opportunity. We don't really get to hear Nancy's rebuttal to that, so I'm assuming she kind of goes along with it, and in the grand scheme of things. But also, it's like they're kind of, in court and everything, too. They're out of moves. It's like, Jimmy's like, so what are you going to do? Like, do you got any extra moves? I don't know what Michael wrote on that paper. I guess he was making it seem like it came from the jury, but it set some stuff in motion that it's like, okay, let's listen to the call. And so I guess the whole point of it was to kind of make Kofi seem even more bleh. Because I guess it was to make him seem even more guilty, trying to make him go like, okay, like, I think my thought is that whatever the case may be, whatever Michael set in motion, he was trying to show like Kofi left Rocco, this wheezing and stuff like that was Rocco. In actuality, maybe it was Rocco. I was assuming like the wheeze, because I didn't think he could, I don't remember, I think all the wheezing on the phone was like Adam, and they're just making it seem like it was Rocco, but maybe it was Rocco. My understanding the entire time was it was purely Adam they were hearing wheezing. But I think the point was to kind of make it villainize Kofi even more, because it's like, oh, this is Rocco's last breaths, like the way he's sounding, and Kofi left him. So like trying to justify Carlo's reaction, kind of being like, I guess being like, the fact is Kofi was so cold-blooded that he left that. Because obviously they tried to spin it, Xander in particular tried to spin it until your boy said called Fiona a C word. But I think for him it was this situation of like, trying to spin it to be like, you were confused in a situation, and it's like, yeah, most likely, that's probably what happened. So I think it's trying to vilify Kofi by being like, he was willing to leave someone wheezing like that. Of course, she'd be a little terrified at his self-defense. I don't know. But regardless of it all, Carlo was found not guilty, which even had that look in Fiona's face as she was looking at Michael, almost like she kind of had a feeling like something was definitely going on there. Jimmy's happy, like, okay. Side note, I skipped over it, but we finally had the moment. I've literally been calling this moment since the beginning of the show. Well, probably not. I won't give myself that credit. But I've been calling for it the past couple episodes. I'm like, when is this scene going to happen? But obviously, Adam kind of panics hearing, the recording. Obviously, Gina does too. And in the hallway, Adam hits that inhaler. And then both Gina and Jimmy turn and look to him, because I guess she's aware of the inhaler as well. Once again, I guess you have cops, so I would have thought you would have ran that DNA, but I guess they felt like, oh, we got our guy, so they still never felt the reason to. It's like, cancel that order. I mean, to be fair, it also makes sense because his DNA wouldn't be in the system, I guess. Because I don't know if, like I said, I don't remember if law enforcement's DNA is in the system like that. I think government officials and law enforcement are, but maybe not. I mean, Adam's DNA definitely wouldn't be in the crime system, and so neither would Michael's. So I guess, like I said, that's why they're like, well, we couldn't get a DNA match, so fuck it. Like I said, we never circled back to it because they were like, oh, we're going to get like a DNA match or something in the next 36 hours. But like I said, maybe they were like, oh, we got Michael now. We don't need it. Whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's like now they know, but Jimmy hadn't let Michael know that he knows. Okay, so it's like, oh, dude, this is all happening too fast. You have Eugene being upset about everything, that he ends up going to a store. You're like, he's about to buy a gun. I was like, this is going to get bad. This is going to get extremely, extremely, extremely bad. Adam, it's like, gets invited by Fia. She's like, hey, my family's going to have like a bit of a celebration, so will you be there? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is, like I said, at that moment, everything's starting to converge. Jimmy calls him up. It's like, oh, yeah, your son, his breathing. Maybe he needs his inhaler. And it's like, Jimmy, he's like, oh, why don't you come and see what I'm about to do to your son? It's like, shit. Michael's car's blocked in. He's bolting for it. He's running. He's legging it. Adam shows up there. He's turned off his phone. And you have Gina and Jimmy looking at him. It's like both of them know, but Carlo doesn't know. Neither does Fia. So it's like, oh, dude, I was like, this is bad, dude. I was like, because I didn't know which way this was going to fall, how this was all going to play out. And in that moment, Fia's like, oh, let's get away. Maybe Alaska, stay away forever. And he's like, yeah, I like that. And so it's like, dude, Michael, Jimmy comes over to him and staring at Adam. And you're like, what's he about to do? And he opens up his arms. Because I couldn't tell whether he was going to forgive Adam, because it's like, hey, I get it. Your dad, wanted to protect his son, but it's like, regardless of anything, it's like, you're still responsible for my son's death, and your father has to pay because he was trying to cover for you. He's like, as a father, I get it. You don't really, like, the look on Jimmy's face looked like the moment I get the chance, I'm gonna kill your son. It's like, probably wouldn't have too many opportunities, consider how much Fia is so into him, but then maybe he just end up telling Fia the truth, and that kind of would all break apart anyway. But Eugene was able to sink in because of Michael. It's just one of those things where just everything goes wrong and kind of right at the same time, depending on the perspective. And then Eugene's rolling up and he sees Carlo, pulls out the gun, and in that moment he fires. Because I didn't know at first, the reason why I was bringing this up, because I didn't know whether he was going full blown, I'm a murder the entire Baxter family. I was worried that like he was going to go like kill everybody. Jimmy, Carlo, Fia, Gina, and Adam would get caught in the crossfire. I thought, well, he kind of does, but I'll get to that second. But like, I thought it might turn out like that, but it's like, it's understandable why you go after Carlo. Carlo's the one that specifically killed Kofi. He doesn't know the full story behind everything. He doesn't know that like Michael and Adam are like Adam's the one, and that makes this whole, I mean, that in itself, the tragic irony of it all. He technically killed a person that is most responsible for his brother. Technically most responsible for his brother dying. Is because Adam set this all in motion by not, turning himself in. By, and to be fair, he was scared. Michael was scared more so than anything, because more than his own life, what he cared about was protecting his son's life. And for Adam to get hit, and it's like, it's just, like I said, the layers upon layers, because this all started with Adam, for him to end up dead, because that's the biggest tragic irony of this all. Michael went through so much to protect his son, get his son like a good life, get away from all this, for him to end up dead at the end of it all. His son to be bleeding in his arms. And even despite everything, like Jimmy, no father should have their child die in their arms. And I think that hit him, especially because he's holding Thea, who's covered in Adam's blood. And it's just kind of like, Michael being like, I got you. No one saw Eugene because Eugene dropped the gun and he bounced. So no one knows. I mean, I'm like, dude, it's It's already, like I said, you went through all this to protect Adam, and it's like, you compromised everything that you believed in, your justice, your principles, and what was it for? It was all for nothing, because at the end of the day, your son still ended up dead. That's the effed up situation behind it all. And because Jimmy would have did, and that's even more. It would have ended like this from the beginning. For what happened to Rocco, Jimmy would have, because it wouldn't have mattered that Adam was a 17-year-old kid. We saw what happened to Kofi, who was a 17-year-old kid. The literal same thing would happen, because that was even what he was saying to Lee. Like, if Adam goes to jail, Kofi didn't survive. There's no way Adam will either, especially with the Baxters. So it's kind of like even aside from the Baxters, but even more so because of the Baxters. And it makes it sad. Because even, like I said, I was paying attention to the clock. I'm like, we got a couple minutes left. Like, where is this? How does all want to play out? I telling you, it didn't cross my mind to even think that Adam would die at the end. Like, I didn't know whether, like, Michael would be like, I'm the one who did it, and gets confessed and it ends up catching a bullet for it or something. Like I said, but I think that's the perfect way to play this out, because it's like making everything he did, it's like it was all for nothing because your son ended up dying, especially because you did this because you loved your son so much. He was your world, and to lose him like that, I don't know, man. It's a sad and, like I said, tragic irony. But it fits so perfectly that, it's like all your laid plans kind of mean nothing at the end. You literally went through everything kind of worked out. Carlo was able to, like, probably if they had never found out about Adam, everything would have been good. Granted, we don't know. Jimmy still could have gone back on his word and popped Michael at some point in time. He just would have left Adam alone, but now he knows the truth about Adam. Not just him, Jimmy, where things would have gone if it wasn't for Eugene. There's so many, who knows, Because of that ending, it leaves so much left open, because it's not like everything was like 100% resolved. Yet this story in itself is encapsulated like this is the end. It's kind of a bummer of an ending to end on, but once again, this is a limited series. Like I said, it's based off of a, like I said, I meant to look into it, but like I said, I think it is an Israeli show. Like I said, I could be mistaken. So once again, I want to look into like what are the difference between that show and this that it was adapted from, because the other one I think is also a limited thing. It was like a 1-season thing as well, but like there's still so much story you could tell in this, because Michael is still alive, having to live in a world where like Nancy knows the truth about you, Lee knows the truth about you, Jimmy knows the truth. I mean, granted, he got his justice because ironically your son ended up bleeding out and dying much like his, so there's some form of justice in that regard. I mean, it's like, I guess in the end there was some form of justice, because Carlo might not have gone down for Kofi's murder, but like, Adam who killed Rocco kind of, so it not like, because in the broad sense of this show, there might be a little bit more balancing of the scales to a certain extent. There's no full ever balancing anything out just because of everything, but there's so many avenues of like, Charlie, aiming for mayor and what that means. Like, Nancy helping him take out this is a mini series. There have been shows that started off as maybe a limited or mini series that eventually were like, oh, it was so well received, we are getting another season. Who knows if they'll do that or not? From some of the stuff I'm reading, it's like, no, this was set up to be a mini series. So some places are leaving it up in the air, being like, we'll see what Showtime decides to do. I mean, I think it depends on some people, because some people might be like, leave it as this. It's a bummer of an ending, and it's just like it's one of those things where you're like, maybe I would need one more episode to wrap every storyline up to know what an epilogue episode at the very least, whether or not, because I doubt we would get a full second season, but I mean, if we did, where would you go? But I think it is just gonna be like no, leave it at that. It needs to have this ending, because maybe the original show had a very similar ending, and it's like, it's okay leaving things on a bummer of an ending that not everything is resolved. I mean, that doesn't mean like a second season is going to have a happily ever after. There's never going to be a happily ever after this, but there's like so many open storylines. Like, they make a whole point about the whole Robin thing. I mean, maybe that's why they like hide the person she was having an affair with, because it's like, it doesn't matter, because we're never going to resolve that. It's just going to be a mystery. Like I said, maybe there needs to be an epilogue, maybe we'll kind of get a little bit of that potentially in a second season, but I would love to see if they decided to go down the route of, I'd love to see what they would do with the second season if they gave it one, but I'm also a little content with them being like, hey, it's always that interesting thing with these. It's the same thing with Watchmen. I'm comfortable. I was comfortable with them making a second season, but them making a choice. We want this to be a one and done. I'm totally fine with that too. But I'm just curious, like, where else things could go. Because also, like, what does this mean between Desire and the Baxters? Because that's still open in it. Because it's like, oh yeah, you still owe us. And the whole point was to take down the Baxters anyway. And Eugene having basically, he's going to potentially, when this all eventually circles back to him, is going to lead to a war, which at the end of the day, Michael calls this like so much death and destruction. Like, he has no one to blame. Like, who knows how things would have, I mean, that's going to be his biggest regret of how things could have played out if he had, never, done all that he did to protect Adam. Also, will Fia ever learn the truth of, hey, the man you were in love with was the one responsible? So, like I said, I flip back and forth, like whether or not I would want a second season. So I'll leave it to Showtime's discretion. If they decide we're not giving it a second season, I won't find them. I'll be like, okay, I would have loved to have seen what they did, but I'm okay with that too. But if they decide to give it a second season, I'm like, I think that's an interesting place to end off. Like I said, it's a bummer, but you making a choice to give it a second season, I'm with you. Because I know some people who are like, nah, like, even before now, they were like, nah, don't just wrap this up in a season. This needs another season. But they're like, limited series, man, you never know how they could potentially go with that stuff. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm leaning more towards there not being a second season, but I'm ready to be 100% proven wrong in that regard. So, like I said, we'll have to keep an eye out for this situation. So, but overall, just a great show, great story. That's why I kind of feel like even more so, like, it encapsulated this story that it's like what Michael was willing to do for his son, and at the end, the poetic irony behind it of like it was all for nothing is this is that story. Anything beyond that is just kind of up to your own imagination. I think that's kind of the point. I mean, sadly, I think that's life in general. Like, there are other stories that will go on, but this particular story is what we got to view into. And that's what matters. Yeah, there's other through lines of like, there's other storylines, but it's like, nope, this is the encapsulated story we wanted to tell. Beyond that, use your own imagination. Like I said, I keep saying it, but we'll see whether that ends up being the case or not. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.